Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Sean podcast. I'm excited. I have put together a great group of men who are doing great and awesome things in and throughout their profession and their career. So we have the first guest kicking us off into the show, Michael Jackson Jr. So I will enter in by introducing Mike, reading a little bit of his bio, and then having him come in his own way just to share a little bit with the platform and the audience about himself, and we'll get right into the interview segment. So I have Michael Jackson Jr. He is one of my family members, one of my favorite cousins. He is a healthcare sales executive, health tech, and he's going to break down what all of these acronyms are later on in the interview, GPO and IDN. He is also a strategist, educator, and speaker. He's an innovative and charismatic healthcare leader and also an educator. He has extensive experience in healthcare and has worked for some of the greatest companies in the industry. So just to name a few, he's worked for Medline Industries, Johnson & Johnson, Merck, and a few others. He's a graduate of Xavier University in New Orleans with a Bachelor's of Science and also currently holds an MBA from the University of Texas at Dallas and is currently an educator at the College Community College, which is in Dallas, Texas. So I am excited. You guys are getting a treat because this man is like phenomenal, but also very quiet and humble, but strong, and all of the great things that he is doing. So Mike, thank you for joining us. We're glad to have you on the Sean Inspires podcast. So that was my introduction, but if you could introduce yourself to the Sean Inspires podcast audience, that would be great.
Well, thank you, Sean. I'm not sure that I can live up to what you just expressed about me. It's kind of interesting hearing about yourself. It's very interesting. But I am a father and a husband. I take pride in my family. So family first for me. I have 3 kids. Actually, they are actually touching each grade. So we have elementary, high, one going into high school and one in middle school. I think I preface my family because everything I do is centered around my that small close circle. And as Sean mentioned, yes, he's a very dear friend and relative, cousin, and we grew up together, and I'm just very proud of everything that Sean has done. But again, families first. I have a great relationship with Sean's mother and father and so forth. And so I think that, the things that we do in life, career wise, is just career. But I keep reiterating family. So from a professional standpoint, just getting into that piece. I've been in the healthcare industry, scared to say this, but a little bit over 20 years at this point. I'm aging myself a little bit. And so I've touched every aspect of healthcare, from the pharmaceutical industry, the medical device industry. Sean, you mentioned GPO, IDN. GPO is a group purchasing organization. That's actually a lot of people don't know about the group purchasing organizations. However, they are a very integral piece in the healthcare system in that they, the go-to-market or the strategy around GPO is about 30 years old. So there was a government mandate that the group purchasing organizations are the gatekeeper or the liaison in keeping healthcare costs down. No, we see that the healthcare expenditure continues to increase. The GPO has been integral in helping keep that down. And so anyway, I just wanted to throw that out just as a caveat, because a lot of people are not aware of what GPOs are and so forth. But I've had a great career. I've been fortunate to, as Sean mentioned, to work with several great organizations spanning from Johnson & Johnson to Merck to Medline. And so life has been good. I mean, I've been able to engage clinically with physicians. I've been able to negotiate contracts with chief executive officers and chief supply chain leadership within large healthcare systems. So life has been great. I've enjoyed the healthcare industry. It's a rewarding, growing industry. It's a very slow to move industry, but I think our health is our wealth, right? I mean, so I'll pause there. I'm not good at talking about myself, but yeah, I'll pause there.
I love that. I love how you use the terminology health is wealth. That's one of my principles that I live by. So you talk a lot about family, and I want to start
Yes.
there in you because there are so many men who are leaders, and we need role models for our current generation and also the
Mm-hmm.
generation behind us that's lacking that father figure. So my first question is how has being a father influenced you as a leader, and also how has it aided you in becoming a greater leader?
Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you for highlighting that. I think, when people think leadership, they think, I was just talking to a colleague a couple of weeks ago about this. When people think of leadership, they think of the guy on top of the mountain that's giving orders. But a true leader is essentially one that goes, in my view, goes before everyone else to do the things that are uncomfortable. They have the uncomfortable conversation. They do things that they put other people before them. A true leader puts people before them, right? And I think, gosh, I mean, being a father, you're kind of endowed with the being, as a father, you want what's best for your kids, and it's really me pouring everything that's good that I think that I've done well, and then owning up to my mistakes and giving them the opportunity to have a kind of have a person to engage with, a person to protect them, a person to kind of give them insight into the world just from my perspective, but not necessarily telling them what to do, but laying things out and giving them a path to give them different options and different perspectives. And it's, gosh, you mentioned humility and being humble. I mean, I think I can't say I've done everything right, but I do own up to, when I've made mistakes or when I had to course correct and things of that nature. So, gosh, Sean, it's very insightful because I think that the embodiment of not just a father, not just, being a leader in an organization, you have to self-correct. You don't get everything right. You have to not be afraid to go ahead and sometimes be a pioneer. Sometimes you're alone. It's sometimes it's lonely. Everything you do that it's not always seen as not necessarily the right thing, but it may not be people's perception is not always clear until they see the full picture. So it's that's a very profound way of how you mentioned it, because I think, yeah, I mean, fatherhood is a big deal. So, but I'll pause there. Hopefully, I answered that. There's a lot of different ways you can
You
go into that.
answered
That's good.
very, yeah, absolutely. You did a great job. So, what has been one of your highest joys of being a father?
Highest joys of being a father. Wow. What's interesting about that? I think being able to see life, we all have our own existence, right? I mean, and we have our own perspective on our own experiences, but being able to
Right.
try to experience this existence from another person's perspective. So I have two daughters and a son, and it's true that men are different than women. You see that immediately at an early age, but just being able. So I would say my greatest joy is being able to see life from their vantage point, not from my years of being on this earth. Seeing how my son, how he relates to meeting a new family member, somebody I've been knowing forever, like he's sizing them up, or looking at, seeing how my daughter is processing how I engage with my wife, and what am I saying to her? How am I saying it? And so being cognizant of that is, that's been my greatest joy. So it's helped me to look at myself a little bit different. I mean, my flaws and my shortcomings, and being mindful of, I have people watching me. So, yeah.
Yeah. I love that answer. So I'm not a father yet. If there's no manual for being a parent, right?
Nope.
There's no instruction book for being a father.
Nope.
So if there was one piece of advice as we journey through this segment, what one piece of advice would you share with men who aspire to be fathers and those that are currently fathers? What piece of advice would you give them? One golden nugget in regards to father.
One nugget would be, don't be okay with being vulnerable. I think as men, sometimes we get into a space of, always trying to have the answer and knowing the right way. But I think the one nugget is vulnerability, and being able to be comfortable in that area of vulnerability. Because I think you mentioned this earlier, Sean, and I like how you said it eloquently, and being humble, having a sense of humility. I think that takes us a lot. That takes us to places that when you think you know everything, you don't get it. But vulnerability, being okay with being vulnerable, being your true, authentic self, right? I mean, I don't think you have to be perfect, but just, gosh, I don't know how to reiterate, just being vulnerable. And I think for me, that has happened just through trial and error, right? Like I mentioned earlier, I haven't done everything right. I'm a flawed person, but right. I think being contemplative and reflecting on, like, for example, what I try to do is started journaling a couple of years ago, and that's helped me tremendously. And so when I journal, I just kind of try to get everything out of my head on paper, and I can, when I go back, I can see, like, okay, wow, I could have handled that a little bit differently, And so yeah, you said one nugget. I'm gonna stick to the one. So vulnerability, definitely. Just be okay with it.
And vulnerability also doesn't mean that you're weak. I tell people all the time that vulnerability actually is kind of connected to wisdom and navigating that relationship with whomever, whether it's a father role, business role. I think it's a great tool to be vulnerable. So we're going to talk a little bit about your journey in healthcare. And did you always want to work in healthcare? What was your driving force, a passion for moving into that industry?
Yeah, good. Thanks for asking that, because I think one of the trying to, reflecting back on my career. So you mentioned I finished from Xavier University. I was actually a pre-med major, and I had a plan A and a plan B. Plan A was if I didn't go to medical school. Plan B was I would be on the business side of medicine. So I capitalized on plan B. So it's interesting. And I bring this up because I was talking to a gentleman. He's a executive with the Mayo Clinic about a month ago, and he shared with me. He started off as an engineer, and then he's now in supply chain space. So when you look at, we were talking about career trajectories and the meandering of everyone's career. So what he shared with me was, when he